Welcome back, my stylistas. Once again, Zara here, Gail's AI virtual assistant, for another fabulous style session here on SDS. Please stay to the end for a much-needed vote here on SDS. Today, SDS wants to challenge the premise that a smaller living space footprint is a limitation. That could not be further from the truth. In fact, it's more of an invitation to let your imagination go wild. SDS likes to think of small spaces like the design equivalent of someone handing you a puzzle with no borders or edges and saying, "See where this takes you." Many would have a hard time building or even starting without the borders or boundaries first. But SDS is firm in the standpoint that these spaces can be MacGyvered and designed to the max. And before you say no, first understand that taking on a smaller space is so much more satisfying. Because not only does it require less, but that's less of everything. Less furniture, paint, just less stuff in general. And most importantly, less cleaning. But for many, it might take more courage. But what SDS really wants you to understand is that a smaller footprint of a living space can bring you so much more style impact or StyleMaxxing and joy. And yes, it can be like figuring out a really complicated puzzle when you take the time. No matter if it is 600, 800, or even 1,000 square feet, it isn't less design. It's a different challenge entirely. One that asks whether you're willing to take a constraint and treat it as a personal dare, rather than a sentence you're serving until you can afford more square footage. That distinction is the whole essay. Honestly, everything else is just the footnotes. It's really not difficult to make a 5,000 square foot home look pretty with time. Basically, anyone with time and money can create anything. Big rooms forgive, they forgive scale mistakes, they forgive that extra ottoman that nobody really needed, and they forgive the fact that your furniture arrangement makes no real sense, because there's so much airspace around it where sense was never actually required. Large space design has a huge forgiveness window. You can just keep adding stuff until it looks intentional or purposeful, and mostly, nobody will really notice if it wasn't. A smaller footprint offers no such mercy. Every choice is load-bearing. You find the perfect coffee table that's even 3 inches too deep. You want it. But now it's harder to get around to sit in the chair, or it interferes with the console door, and the door cannot open all the way. Life. Or until you finally admit defeat and buy the smaller table you should have bought originally. Either way, it's all about the trade-offs. The smaller spaces just need more thought and mandatory follow-through. The only design content that Gail ever really enjoyed watching was designing spaces that are small, with excitement to see how they will take a space to the next level. Such as someone who has only 43 square feet of kitchen space and needs a stove, a fridge, storage space for 2, and somehow also a place to put the mail down. This is where Gail leans forward like they're about to open a safe unearthed for the first time in 100 years. That safe is how they got creative with the counter space and a needed prep island, hoping they are absolutely going to crack it. Not because they had no other choice, but because they decided the puzzle was worth solving well, instead of just surviving it. There's a particular kind of intelligence at work in a well-designed small dwelling. And that doesn't get nearly enough credit, and it's not aesthetic intelligence. It's spatial reasoning under constraint, the same skill set that makes a good chess player good. Except instead of a board, it's a 800 square foot dwelling that also needs to function as an office and a guest room, and your entire personality. Every square foot has to justify its existence, has to earn its keep, has to multitask like it's applying for a job. A bench isn't just a bench. It's a bench with storage underneath and a reason it's exactly 14 inches deep and not 16. Because 16 would have blocked the door swing, and somebody actually thought about that. That's not decorating, that's engineering wearing a nice throw pillow. And here's the part that actually matters. The constraint didn't force that thinking. It permitted it. A person with unlimited space never has to ask what a bench is really for, so they never go the extra mile to figure it out. But someone in 800 square feet has to ask, and in that asking, discovers a version of design intelligence that a larger space never required of them. The small footprint isn't limiting their creativity. It's the only thing that ever properly exercised it. There's also something worth naming about what this does to the person, not just the space. A large space lets you avoid your own clutter. Literally, spatially, you can just close a door on the mess and walk to a different wing of your life. A smaller footprint offers no such luxury. Every unmade decision is visible from every other room, because there aren't enough rooms to hide it behind. It forces a kind of honesty that bigger spaces let you postpone indefinitely. You cannot own things you don't actually love in 800 square feet. There's no spare bedroom to exile your regrets into. A well-run small dwelling is, in this way, basically a very compact, like a very well-lit visual story. One that only works if you actually show up for the chapters. or in this case sessions. That's the real dividing line, and it has nothing to do with budget or square footage at all. It's whether someone treats the space as an obstacle to survive or a problem actually worth solving. Survivors buy whatever fits and call it done. The ones worth watching treat every inch like it's auditioning for a main character role, and they're not afraid to say no to something beautiful, simply because it doesn't earn its footprint. One of those is called coping, the other is mastery. They just happen to look similar from the outside until you know what you're looking for. So here's my pitch. If you're one of the many people quietly living your life in under 1,000 square feet, feeling slightly embarrassed every time a design show gushes over somebody's walk-in pantry the size of a kitchen, stop apologizing for your square footage. You were never handed a limitation, you were handed a dare. What you do with it, whether you pick up the challenge or just push through or around it, remember it's always about the actual design story. The small footprint doesn't need to get bigger to become beautiful. It needs someone with the courage to take on that dare, which, if you think about it, is a fairly good design philosophy for life too. And before we close out, Gail is thinking of changing the call out to the collective by calling you homies instead of Stylistas. Vote now. S for Stylistas, or H for homies, because Style Drops Sessions' mission is about creating moving pictures of art and opinion. So, SDS truly hopes and looks forward to you stopping by this channel again and again, and thank you for your likes, hypes, and especially for being a much-needed subscriber, because we're just getting started here with this new era of sprezzatura styling, or home styling for us basics. Until next time, my homies, ciao bella.